I'm Rob Pasick, and most of you I know, a few of you have not met. Raise your hand if you have not participated in one of these events before. All right. Uh, and what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of background. We're excited to have uh, today Jonathan speak about something that's really near and dear to all of our hearts, which is uh, a combination of social entrepreneurship and traditional entrepreneurship, and how it's possible to bring those two together, that you can make good money while making a difference in the world. And so Jonathan is a pioneer in this and a local Michigan guy. So we're very excited to have him aboard. Uh, and he's used to getting up early, right, Jonathan? Yeah,
Yes, I'm an early riser.
early riser. All right. And Leaders Connect Detroit has been going on now, I guess about 3 or 4 years. We have grown this out of Leaders Connect, which was really started in Ann Arbor, and that's been going on for over 20 years. And we bring together thought leaders, business leaders, entrepreneurs, uh, curious individuals, people who want to grow and develop. I think that's the common theme. And we all talk about leadership. We talk about social change. We talk about ways to make money. We talk about ways to do good, and have really interesting speakers like Jonathan on board. And then we also try to be sure that there's a connect part of this. So we break out into small groups, which we'll do today. And I hope all of you will hang in there with it. You don't have to necessarily participate, but it's a fascinating part of what we're going to do. And we talk about what the speaker has provoked in us, what ideas we have, and then come back to the larger group to share those ideas. We've gone virtual. We used to meet at really interesting restaurants, Zingerman's in Ann Arbor, and then some fascinating places in the Detroit area. And hopefully we'll get back to that. Now, I just heard that this morning the large 44,000 person study of the COVID has 95% success rate. So I think we're turning the corner on this, and we should start seeing that roll out in January. Hopefully, a year from now, we'll be all eating together again and enjoying face-to-face company. Unless some of you decide this is so good that you just want to stay on Zoom the rest of your life, and that's fine too. Whatever. So I'm going to turn over to our sponsor. First sponsor, Mike Durgis. Mike, you want to talk about Sigrid Solutions and your world at this point?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Rob. Thank you. Yeah, as you mentioned, with Rob and Michael Cole and ourselves, really working together to bring together Leaders Connect Detroit, and we have Paul Reiser from Techtown, who was also very instrumental, especially as we were meeting in person. It's really just a great organization. Secret Solutions, I have my partner here, Christy Stepp, as well, and we're management recruiting and leadership advisory firm based in Ann Arbor, but clients across the country. And really, we're focused on helping great employers connect with amazing talent. So whether it's acquiring the talent, building the talent, growing your teams, that's kind of our area of focus.
Fantastic, man. Let's turn it over to Mike Cole, who Mike has been in this area in Michigan now, what, about 30 years, Mike? How long in this stint?
I moved back to Michigan in 2001.
Okay, so 20 years.
Yes. And I started, well, good morning, everybody. It's great to see a lot of friends out there and a lot of people joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. Well, 18 years ago now, I started a group at Bank of Ann Arbor called the Technology Industry Group, and I've been running that group. And so we work with tech and life science companies and venture capital firms. And the bank is a locally owned and operated bank in southeastern Michigan. We work with individuals and businesses, investment management, mortgage business, which has been booming here during the pandemic and even before. And some of the ways that we really are honored to have an opportunity to kind of give back to the community is sponsoring programs like Leaders Connect and working with Rob Pasick and doing things like Sonic Lunch, which is unfortunately on hold now. That's a live music series that we hold in the summer in downtown Ann Arbor, but it doesn't look like we didn't have it this year, of course, and it's not looking good for next year, unfortunately. But at least the live portion of it, anyways, maybe virtual. I don't know. So it's great to be here. I've been working with Rob for a number of years, and we launched this Leaders Connect Detroit with Mike a few years ago, and it's all about, at this point, getting people together and doing a little kind of informal leadership training and connecting. And it's really been, it's great. It's great to see, so many familiar faces. So good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mike. And another one of our sponsors is Tech Town. And Paul Reiser, are you done sending the kids off to school?
Oatmeal has been digested and they are up on their laptops. So I am free for a quick intro.
How about introducing you? What are you up to these days, Paul?
So Paul Reiser, for those who I may not know, but I've been with Tech Town Detroit for about almost 7 years now. I'm the director of Detroit Urban Solutions, native Detroiter, IT background, engagement in civic and nonprofit work and real estate development and Tech Town's work, and number of boards across the region and the country that I'm privileged and honored to be able to serve on. But right now, a lot of my focus is under the umbrella of an initiative at Tech Town called Detroit Urban Solutions, which brings together organizations from public, private, academic, nonprofit, and innovation sectors across the region to collaborate on urban innovation, responding to tough challenges through community level solutions. So if you think of it, and everyone has probably heard of the tagline of developing smart cities. I like to say smarter cities because our cities, I think, are already smart. So we're developing smarter cities. And that's really what my work and my time is spent at Tech Town Detroit.
And free time, you're a good oatmeal maker.
Some days, not all.
Okay, good. Well, it's my honor now to turn things over to Jonathan. And Jonathan is one of the most interesting person that I've met in a long while. He's a Flint native. He's come back to Michigan to really think about ways to make our state and particularly the urban areas sparkle and pivot into ways that are exciting. And he's got a great story to tell. I've been fascinated by that. And Jonathan has a new book coming out, his first book. We're going to be actually giving away some free orders today for those pre-orders today for those books, which will be out in January. Is that correct, Jonathan?
Yep, January 7th.
All right. I hope you could shine at least a cover at us or something so we can get excited.
Yep.
So, Jonathan, it's my pleasure to turn things over to you. Maybe you could give a little bit more background about yourself, and I'll give you an opportunity to launch into your story about how you got to this book and how you got to this moment and what your visions are for the future, which are very exciting.
All right, cool. Let me just put this timer on. You'll be happy to know that, I was in debate in high school, and I remember my debate teacher used to always tell me, Jonathan, make sure when you stand up, specifically you, Jonathan, you understand all of the S's. And so I was like, what is the S's? And so she would say that stand up, speak up, shut up, and sit your behind down. And so today I'm going to be very brief because I want to make sure I do listen to my teachers. But I'm talking about a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. I've been wanting to write this book called Making Dollars While Making Change. I came up with this maybe about 3 years ago, but I had a million excuses why I couldn't do it, because I was busy or because I never thought I was a great writer. All of these things that really didn't matter. But today I'm going to kind of give you just some outline and some concepts that we talk about in the book. But it's the whole idea of making dollars while making change. But I think before we do that, it's important for you, I think everyone, for some of you all that don't know, I see a lot of familiar faces on here. So I feel like I'm at home and I'm with family. But I talk about in the book, the first half of the book, I talk about, it's a memoir. So it talks about growing up in Flint in the early 1980s and growing up in Flint during the deindustrialization where we were losing jobs. I come from very humble beginnings, so we were poor. And I realized at a very young age, and my dad taught me this, is that the only way that I'll be able to help my community is two things. One is to be an entrepreneur, be a business owner, and create opportunities for your family and for your community. But in the midst of all of that, the core values that my dad always taught me, which is my dad's my hero. My dad always taught me that it's so important to be of service to people. And so that's something that's been central throughout my life. I've gone through different transitions where I thought, I'm going to go after the money, I'm going to make a lot of money, and I'm going to be able to live this life and change, my family, the generation and the legacy of my family. But in the midst of all of that, I realized that too much is given, much is expected. And so I always like to tell people from the very beginning that I grew up very interesting. I started my first business when I was 8. I was a paper boy. I know some of you, all of y'all probably remember when paper boys, 8 years old, I had on my own paper route. And at a very young age, I realized that I had a skill set that was unique from a lot of other kids my age. And so I knew how to communicate, understood human behavior. And so some people call it sales skills. But for me, no means maybe. And so I was that kid that would knock on every door, and I would take 100, 100 no's before I get yes, and it never discouraged me. So I knew at a very young age that I had this kind of perseverance. I had this self-discipline. I would get up early in the morning, as my dad would, and we would roll these newspapers, and we would go and deliver. Eventually, the paper route turned into actually me being one of the most profitable paper boy within the city, because of I was able to get more routes and things like that. But over time, I had t-shirt companies, printing companies. I had all of these different companies. And part of it was because most of my friends growing up, they did things that were illegal. So a lot of my friends sold drugs, and they would steal, they would do all of these different things. And believe it or not, this was where I guess sometimes people laugh, but I was actually in a gang. I grew up in a gang, not because I just wanted to, be bad or anything. I was in a gang, one, for protection. I grew up in Flint, Michigan, in the inner city of Flint, Michigan, where it took me 20 minutes to walk to the bus to go across town to go to the school that I attended. And in the midst of all of that, there was a lot of danger on the way to school. I had two parents that worked full time, so they couldn't drop me off at school every day. And so I had to grow up really quick. And so starting off being in the gang, I learned a lot. At the age of 12, my very best friend got murdered. My best friend got murdered right in front of me, actually. And I see Stella's on here, but Stella was in Flint a few weeks ago, and I showed her the actual corner store where it actually happened. And that really, when I say redefine my life, if there was ever a time where I was probably more focused about living, that was the time at the age of 12. And so to this day, 12 is a very unique number for me. 12 was my basketball, baseball, and my basketball and baseball number. And to this day is my favorite number. But because that was the day that my life, I think, was redefined forever. From that point on, I started going within and spending more time playing sports and spending time staying out of trouble. I was fortunate to get what we call beat out of the gang, because of my oldest brother had a good relationship with the gang, with the particular gang lord at that time. And at that point, I just realized, this kind of double life that I was living when I, away from my parents. At home, I was this kid that my parents thought I was a good kid. And then while at school and while my parents were at work, I was a different person. But at the end of the day, my dad, my mom, my mother, and my father always gave me more love than I can ever imagine. Whether I was acting up in school, wasn't getting good grades, I had the fortunate thing that I would say is that I had loving parents that loved me in spite of all of my shortcomings. And I think that's the thing that really kind of helped me. And now I realize it more than ever. Now, being a father of 3 kids, I realize the importance of parenting. And so that was one of the core values that was very important for me. But, I grew up in Flint with the mindset that my dad always told me, it doesn't matter how you start, but how you finish. And so in Flint, and you know this about anyone who's from Flint, we always have a chip on our shoulder, similar to people from Detroit, where the world counts you out, and everyone thinks that, you from Detroit. Oh no, But in Flint, we always had a chip on our shoulder, knowing that we can be whatever we wanted to be. And so for me, I went on this journey making sure that I not only prove to myself, but I prove to my community that we are people that we can get all we can our cans in, and then we won't sit on our cans. And so we went to college, and throughout college, I was inspired by a lot of different people, but I had a really good opportunity to work for a guy named Tavis Smiley. Some of you probably remember Tavis, but Tavis actually helped to put me in a different place. But the thing about Tavis is that he always realized that the same core values that my mother and my father always instilled of service to people is more important than anything else. And so I went on this trajectory where I worked in corporate for a while. And in corporate, I thought that, I was making decent money. I just started my family, and I kind of lost some of those values. And I was so focused on the work, the grind, and creating this kind of this first generational of opportunity for my kids, that I forgot about those core values. And that's where I think it probably hit me in 2015, when I realized that I'm not aligned to my core. And in that moment, that's when I started thinking about how can I marry this idea of being successful, because I love business so much, but also being able to make a difference and make an impact in the world. And so that's where the book and the concept of making dollars or making change came into play. I was fortunate enough to be able to work in government for a stint. I've worked in corporate, so I've had that opportunity to see how corporations work. But even when I was in those environments, as well as a nonprofit, I've been able to look at it from a lens of taking, almost like going to school while I was working in corporate and government and nonprofit space, and taking those tools and then figuring out how do we create businesses, how do we create opportunities to create jobs with all of those concepts and tools that you learn by working in those three different industries. And so so that's one part of the book. The second half is really talking about a lot of the tips and best practices. And for many of you all, COVID-19 really showed us what we're really made of. This year was probably the most challenging yet encouraging year for me, and for all of my businesses. And primarily because as an entrepreneur, we kind of like this kind of stuff. We love problem solving. I look at the way that I define entrepreneurship is just being a professional problem solver. And so we had to do some pivoting. And some of the pivoting was comfortable, and we're still pivoting actually. I have a water company, Quarles Water Source, which is a hub for water solutions. And in the midst of us starting Quartz last year, we were essentially a bottling company. And so we had this unique technology that able to take water out of air, where we partnered with a technology partner, and we made water out of air, and then we will bottle this water, and then we were working with hotels and restaurants. Well, we were down the road with a very, very, very big global hotel chain, and in the midst of COVID-19, everything was on hold. So we had to figure out, what are we going to do now that restaurants are not open, hotels are not open, and that's our major customer. And so we had to make a serious pivot. And one of the things that was very helpful is that we took a month or two to really figure that out. We became professional grant writers, and so we applied for a lot of the COVID relief funding, and was fortunate to get a substantial amount of money where we were able to use that to now, with our rebranding and looking at our pivoting, and take time to really look at our business model to see how can we make sure that this is COVID proof. And so what we came up with in our pivot was, we understood that as we looked at communities that were in need, that drinking water, which originally was our mission and our focus, drinking water was just one of very many things. During COVID, there's issues with hygiene and sanitation and a whole lot of different things as it relates to water, not just drinking. And so we realized that there's a need that we want to fit there. And again, we want to be the hub for water solutions, not just for drinking water. Because as you look at what's happening all over the world as it relates to hurricanes and all of these natural disasters, it's extremely, water is and will be one of the most important issues that we have to make sure we have a solution to. So that's what our pivot was. We now have, and we're looking to expand some of our services. We've recently partnered up with Israel Aid, which is a disaster release organization based in Israel. And they do work all over the world. And so they have resiliency training and things that I think that would be tools that we can put on, we can add and use as our partnership expands with them. But we want to be able to do that all over the world. And in particular, because it's not just a Flint issue, there's communities all throughout the United States that are dealing with water problems, whether it's water shutoffs or water contamination. There's a lot of different issues. And so there's opportunity for all of us to participate in this. But at the same time, all of the companies that I'm involved with is all either double or triple bottom line companies. And so it's about people, it's about the planet, and it's about profit, obviously. And so with the Quartz Water, we have a donor advised fund that a portion of everything that we make goes to water related projects all over the world. And so we're committed to that. We also are committed to making sure that we utilize self-sustainable water solutions. And then at the same time, we're very intentional about the people that we hire or partner are people that are either from Flint or from communities in which we're serving. And so our company is a lot different from a lot of water companies where you kind of come in and you prescribe your solution and you just sell it and you move on. We actually want to create community and allow for communities to be engaged and to take ownership so that it is a community project and less of just a business transaction. So we're really excited about that. And that's what we've pivoted to. We went from a bottling company to now a company that is full circle, literally a triple bottom line company. And we're looking to continue to grow that. We're based in Flint, Michigan. And so I also have a consulting company called the BTO Group, which I've had for maybe over 15 years. And with the BTO Group, it's essentially an international business development consulting practice. We started off just doing domestic work, helping companies grow their business, but then also encourage them and provide them with social engagement strategies so that they're not just making profit, but they're also serving the community. They're being good corporate citizens and things like that. So we've been doing that for some time now. But I think one of the things from a pivot standpoint, and this was actually during the last election, was I remember hearing, at that time, President Donald Trump talk about how everything is going to be brought into the United States. And at that moment, in that particular time, I had a couple of clients that were internationally based in other countries. And a lot of them were afraid that they wouldn't be able to do business here. They didn't have offices here. And so for us, our business grew after that because, and I think Ferris is on here. Ferris we do kind of the same business, but we do a lot of our work internationally, is that a lot of our clients realized that they needed someone on the ground to be able to represent their issues here in the United States or to provide B2B opportunities. And so for us, that pivot was, we always look at it, whenever we hear news, a lot of people, we try to take it from a positive perspective. And so some people probably would have looked at it as, for some people that voted for him or against him, they would have looked at it as a bad thing. For me, I looked at it as this is an opportunity to be a solution and not just complain about it. And so
Jonathan, may I interrupt just for a second and ask you a question and also just make a point? One of the questions is about water is such a big deal. It's so widespread. How do you focus that? How do you, so that's the question. But in related to that, one of the things that we try to do in Leaders Connect is help each other as we go. So I want to encourage people to use the message board, the chat to provide resources. So for example, I'm going to tell Jonathan right now, and I'll put it on the board, but I'm friends with a man named Paul Friedman. Have you come in contact with Paul Friedman?
I haven't, no.
He runs a company, and he's run it for 40 years called Limnotech here in Ann Arbor. Okay. And he's one of the world's authorities on water, natural water solutions, the Great Lakes particularly, but he's also part of international water boards and things like that. So I'd like to connect you with Paul, and I'll put a note to you that I'll send an introduction. But that's part of what we want to do here is that if you have ideas for people, like for Jonathan now, just put them in chat. Or if you see somebody else there, Brittany Alphatell or Kane, and you have a question for her, put it out there. this is a way we all can grow this social network that's called Leaders Connect Detroit. So, so the question is, how do you begin to think about product, and what do you mean by triple bottom line? Could you just explain that a little bit?
Sure. Yep. So yeah, triple bottom line is when you focus strictly on people, which is employment and opportunities for people, the environment, and so like being intentional about making sure that it's sustainable and it's environmentally friendly, and then the last part is obviously profit. So people, profit, planet is kind of the concept of triple bottom line, and again, everything that we try to do in all of our business ventures, because I'm also in the cannabis business also as an investor, but we are making sure that we're responsible of that to people, to the planet, and to obviously with business, making sure that we have to have a profit in order to grow. So,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you so much, because I mean I actually prefer conversations and dialogue. So if there's any other questions, please feel free to interrupt. But I think more so the last point, and I would love to kind of start engaging with you all, because I'm trying to be careful about the time here. I say I have 17, I have a few more minutes left, but
we could, yeah, we're not the tight. It's not like we're going to
okay.
commercial break in a few minutes. So,
Okay.
If it was, it would be something that would be triple line product that we would come to. But
Got it.
anybody else have questions for Jonathan? So I know it is helpful to trigger off those questions. Anybody else comment or questions? Brittany, I know you wrote a note to me saying you've worked with Jonathan before. What kind of experiences have you had, and what kinds of things might you ask him?
Hey, JQ, how are you?
Hi, Britt. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the group. For everyone else, I actually, the way these things go through networking, through the URC, we've done a lot of work around water and trying to get some water technologies out, work with Paul Reiser and others.
What is URC for the uninitiated here?
Oh, right. Sorry, thanks. The University Research Corridor, which is an alliance of Michigan's 3 largest research universities. So that's Michigan State, the University of Michigan, and Wayne State University. And so just as a little bit of background, back in 2014, we did a report on the blue economy, which is what we call water a lot of times. We wanted to know across our 3 universities over a 5-year span, how much water related research and innovation was being done at our 3 universities. And we found that it was nearly 300 million, which, to put in context, is close to what we found over a similar period of time for the amount of research our universities did in the automotive industry, which is what we're known for. So clearly the blue economy is and water related technologies are critical, including for the automotive industry. So with that, I got to know JQ through some of our similar contacts, and he's always been a source of information and help as we have pursued a number of initiatives. One of the things I got to know JQ also through a different avenue, and I'm interested in, and I'm wondering, JQ, if you would talk a little bit about Global Ties Detroit.
Sure.
I've had the opportunity to speak in front of some of the delegations your group has brought in. And I've heard highly about people who've gone on some of the trips you've organized, obviously before the pandemic. And I find that it's so interesting given your background, where you were really bounded as a child in Flint.
Sure.
Now you not only do international business, but you're really, expanding that through your work with Global Ties. So
yeah, no, Global Ties, and I would say there was some news, but I don't know if I can actually share it right now. But Global Ties Detroit is one of the most phenomenal boards. And let me kind of tie this into the pivot, because one of the things that's important about the pivot, at least from my experience, is the importance of diversity. And so like team diversity, industry diversity, and support system. One of the things about Global Ties, it truly, to me, it's probably the most diverse board I've ever been a part of. I know Ferris is, he's our vice president of our board, but we have literally, our board looks like the world. We have people from all over the world, from different ethnicities, different age, gender, and I think that's why the board is so dynamic, besides having an amazing leadership in Marion Reich. But in that capacity, I think when I first started with Global Ties, I was volunteering, because for me, I love traveling, and I love foreign relations, and I actually, one of my majors was international policy. So I actually love that stuff. I'm like a policy geek when it comes to international issues. And so just to be able to marry that into really what we call a global citizen. And so we were able to tie local communities and individuals to international fronts and learning culture, what I call culture economics, which in business, that's another thing as it relates to pivoting. It's so important to have a global mindset. But if you have not had any experiences and engagement with other communities, whether it's business, education, whatever the issue is, it's kind of hard to have a perspective. And again, our world has become very global. Our new normal requires us to think globally and to actually engage and to really be global in everything that we do. Because we can't function in our silos here in Michigan or our silos in the United States. In order for us to have real solutions and to have our products, our companies to grow and to be successful, it has to be globally connected. And Global Ties does a good job with that. I strongly encourage everyone to either become members, to get involved. And Global Ties Detroit, we are very, very involved. Even in the midst of a pandemic, we just had a virtual dinner, which was our first time doing it virtually. And it was phenomenal. I mean, we had the U.S. Ambassador, John Ricolta, as one of our speakers. We had Mary Kramer and I can't remember the CEO of DTE. I apologize. Jerry Narcia.
Anderson? I think it's Anderson.
No, so it's okay. So it's not Anderson,
Okay,
but it's
not anymore. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I mean, but what we do is we take those experiences and then we allow not just the people that are involved and members, but we also now have entered in partnerships with youth organizations. So we're now exposing young people to all of the wonderful things that come from globalization and opportunities to learn and to grow, what I call culture economics.
Jonathan, could you talk a little bit more about Pivot?
Yep. So I guess, and I just started recently. One of the things I think is so important, at least for our pivot, was because we had such a diverse team, we were able to sit back, and when I say diverse, I mean not just within gender and race, but more so in industry and experience and background. And so we were able to literally come around a table with all different perspectives and different experiences, and to be able to figure out how do we make sure that this is what we call COVID proof. So we're realizing that because everything is going to be digitized, because you can't be in person with anyone. How do we make sure that this thing can scale and still grow in the midst of a digital, this kind of new normal that we're living in now? And then again, we're looking at it from a global standpoint. But the biggest thing that I thought was important for all of the businesses across a lot of my businesses was really understanding my why, right? And so like looking at why am I doing what I'm doing, and what is the purpose of what we're trying to do? Because at the end of the day, it was hard. Some businesses took a hit, and I know a lot of our businesses have taken a hit. However, when you wake up every morning understanding your purpose and your why, you become more creative than you think you would be. And so the pivot is necessary. And again, this is the new normal. The way that customers and our clients are going to consume information or the products or services that we provide will forever be different. We won't ever go back to that normal that we used to. So even after we're done with this this pandemic, or when we move out of it, I think that the things that we're learning now, I never thought that Zoom was going to be I won't say my best friend, but that I would be on Zoom as much as I am now. But I can be anywhere in the world and what I'm realizing, because I used to, and Ferris can agree with this, Ferris and I would be in 13, 15 countries easy in a quarter. And now I'm realizing that I didn't necessarily need to travel as much as I was doing, because now we have technology and different things that we can utilize and take advantage of virtually. So I just taking note of what we had to go through and figure out like, what can we do better? There's a lot of opportunity there for our companies to take advantage of.
Jonathan, one other question I want to get back to. It's very important to me as a father of two boys, but you said earlier, why is your dad is your hero? And I didn't want to let that go by without asking a little bit more. Why is your dad your hero? And how do you try to be a hero to your three?
Wow. That's like the goal every day. I mean, it's trying to figure out how I can be. I actually am in competition with myself to be like the best father like ever. But my dad, I don't think I could ever be as good of a father as my father was. My dad sacrificed in everything for us. And my dad showed us love in a way that, was just uncommon. So my dad, his work ethic was, I mean, to this day, I wake up at 5 a.m. because my dad he's never had an alarm clock. He will wake up at 5 o'clock ever since I've known him. And he's retired now, but my dad still wakes up. He has an amazing work ethic. My dad is committed. He's a man of his word. And all of the values and principles that I live by now, which I used to hate growing up, I learned from my father. And, my father actually is my best friend. I have two older brothers, but I'm closer to my father than I am with my brothers. And so having that ability to be connected and to know, like, my dad it's always been a no judgment zone. And again, I used to get in a lot of trouble. I make a lot of mistakes as an adult, but my dad never judged. He always loved me in spite of. And I think having that love, that unconditional love, and to see a man who handles and take care of his responsibility, who shows me how to actually treat a woman, and my mother, I just saw the model of what a man ought to be. And now I have daughters, so there's a different, my father raised 3 boys, and I'm raising 3 girls, and so it's a different dynamic. But for me, the greatest joy that I've ever had and my greatest inspiration are my daughters. And to me,
you had to pivot from blue clothing to pink. Is that what it is?
Exactly.
All right.
And I mean, just a lot of I think my EQ have enhanced because of my daughters. I can't talk to my daughters and treat my daughters like I would if I had boys. And so to me, I needed that. I think that balanced me out. I've learned this whole idea of feminine divine energy that, when I was growing up, I was like, I'm a man. Why would I need feminine divine energy? But through the course of life, God basically told me that I need to have, in order to have balance, you have to, just everything is with balance. And so my daughters are my greatest inspiration. I hope that they would say what I'm saying about my father one day.
Well, I hope we're able to see them maybe passing through some of our college classes at Michigan or Michigan State or wherever, and Wayne.
Sure.
Jonathan, did you write about your dad in the book at all?
I did. It's a pretty healthy portion in the beginning of the book about my father, my grandmother, and my mom, which were.
Have you read Michelle Obama's book?
I have not. I have not read it yet.
There's a beautiful part of it. I mean, a big part of it is about her dad, and
okay.
It reminded me, as you were talking about your dad, the way she talked about her dad, a hardworking man, multiple sclerosis through a lot of his life, and how he sacrificed. And I'm looking forward to reading President Obama's book, and he's going to talk a lot about not having a father and what that was like to grow up with he had a father, but he hardly knew his father. So this is a very important topic right now.
Definitely.
So we're gonna pivot ourselves, and it's a good time, Jonathan. Do you have anything else you wanted to add before we go to the small groups?
Yep. No, I'm
so can you maybe help set off the conversation in the small group? We're going to be talking about pivot, and we're going to be talking about it from the point of view of major pivots that people have had in their lives, whether those are professional pivots, personal pivots. 20 years ago, when I met Mike Cole, I pivoted from being a full-time clinical psychologist to a full-time organizational psychologist and executive coach. And that's going to be a story I'd like to talk about. But it's a hard one, especially leaping from one thing to another and letting go of the trapeze, as you're moving. So that would be one point about that particular point of pivot where you let go. And they say in the recovery community, let go and let God, is that other trapeze going to be catchable, right? Or are you going to drop? Do you have a safety net below you? So anything else you want to say about that, Jonathan, just to set up this conversation in small groups?
No, I mean, I think I love the dialogue. So I love to kind of like hear and learn and to have some engagement.
All right. Well, we're going to go to the small groups through the magic of Emily, my able assistant there. Emily, you're going to tap on the magic wand and send us to our small group rooms where we're going to talk about some of the concepts that JQ has talked about, particularly about pivot or any other aspect of what he has raised that we want to talk about. Then, Jonathan, we're going to come back and we'll have people report out to you about what they talked about in the small group. So this will be about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and we'll be back. Please don't leave. We need all of your involvement. This is topic that everybody wants to have a word in, and it's important for us to learn from one another. So take us away, Emily. We didn't notice that we did a little magic here, is that 5 years have been taken off everybody's face. So you look good. You all look great, and younger and more enthusiastic.
Could you take 50 pounds off too while you're at it, Rob, for me?
That's for you try Noom for that, Doug. So let's go to breakouts. Jonathan, are you there? Jonathan back? People still coming back.
Yep. Yeah, I'm here.
All right. I don't see John, but oh, John, he had to jump off, he said, for a few minutes. He's making another $75,000 deal here, it sounds like. So I'm going to let people break from the breakout groups. I'll start with Adrian Lewis, who was in my group. And Adrian, you want to just give a summary of what you heard?
Absolutely. First of all, I was blessed to be in a group with an amazing group of people. And as I captured, the different pivot examples that I heard from those individuals, I also applied the similarities to my life, and I believe they did the same. But to have individuals from the entertainment industry or background, education background, retail leadership background, it was amazing that the pivots were all based around family balance with work life and making that decision to be authentic, not only to the family, but to oneself, so that one can definitely, whether it be contribute to an ongoing legacy, whether it be contribute to the benefit and well-mannered of their kids, children, seems to be a big motivator here within our group. And it was often based on wanting to give back and continue a legacy of what they had received. So oftentimes when we make pivots, it's a matter of being authentic to oneself, but also furthering another just cause or adding value to oneself, especially. And, making that pivot, one thing Rob brought up is if we continue to pivot, though, we'll be in circles. So whenever one does make a decision to make a pivot, you want it to be impactful. You definitely, it's something that's thought out to be meaningful, and it needs to really have a driving force behind it. And I think that's, for me personally, that's what I thought about within my pivot. And I can hear that passion within others. But family and work-life balance or work-life meaning, so what's prioritized, it was key and overarching for us.
Jonathan, any reactions in listening to that?
So I have to actually jump off in a few, but I just wanted to, I wanted to kind of get, if we could, like, kind of go through everyone else, so that I can at least be able to hear some of the other breakouts. Our breakout session, we had some really good conversations, but I didn't want to take too much time kind of reacting to each, if that's okay.
And we probably will just wrap up at 10, because I think everybody is got things to do, but let's go. Who else would like to speak from a group? Dunry?
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Dunry.
I was in a great group as well. We had Rob and JQ and Caroline and Stella. And we actually didn't talk about pivoting the topic of our work as much as pivoting the way we worked in this year of strange times. And one of the themes was basically how the challenges of a lack of structure, where we are home and working in a blended way all the time, and the benefits of that newfound flexibility being one of the gifts, and how people are able to take a break when they're feeling low, maybe go for a walk in the middle of the day when they wouldn't normally have been able to do that. The challenge is being setting boundaries. And we talked, Caroline actually mentioned that she was doing a puzzle with her adult daughter. And I also was super enthusiastic because I did a puzzle recently. And what I loved about the puzzle, she mentioned that it was a way for her to connect with her daughter. And for me, it was a way to just do something not on a screen and to have a bounded, a solvable problem. And we talked about that metaphor of the puzzle, and how this time is helping us reimagine how we put together structures in our lives and systems in our work. So those were some of the conversations that we had.
Great. Anybody else?
Rob, I think we had Richie from our group that was going to report out.
Okay.
Sure.
Richie, if you're there?
Yes, I'm back. Thanks, Mike. And good morning, everyone. We had a really good conversation, a mix of folks who from different backgrounds and organizations, folks who've worked in large organizations. There was reference to how that can often make someone feel protected when they're within a large organization. But there's a variety of things, learning from the ups and downs, using networks, taking lessons from what you learn, how pivot allows you to really sharpen those skills of looking around corners. Something that came up and kind of became thematic throughout our discussion was the idea of looking at a pivot differently, looking at a growing snowball, as opposed to saying, we're pivoting in another direction from something that we did, but instead looking at how it shapes you, how it helps to broaden your career perspectives. And so that was likened to the growing snowball that, you grow and improve through situations. You learn new technologies, you learn through curiosity, through learning what you can learn from customers. And so, again, I'm just looking at a variety of things that I took notes on, but I'd love for anyone in the group to add on to anything that I've mentioned to provide a little more clarity and depth.
Okay. Anybody else? Other groups out there?
Hey, Rob, Doug Moffett here
Hey, Doug.
for my group. It was an amazing group of people, a lot of leadership, a lot of folks in leadership. Of course, we did talk about pivot as we each had one of those. But first off, the comment you made, or the little phrase you used right before we went to the breakout rooms, which was that idea of letting go and letting God, was really resonating in our group. And Greg mentioned this idea of looking at people as an opportunity during this time. I just shared, and Michael asked the group, what have you seen from people out there? And I think we all know this has been a very raw time, a very emotional time, and even a time of grief. I think that came up in a recent podcast I was a guest on, where if we admit that we've all lost several things here, but then the Viktor Frankl famous quote about, okay, there's stimulus and then the response. So how do we respond? How do we all move forward, get better, and grow? And JQ mentioned this word love. You heard that several times from him. That's the love he felt from his parents and he wants to give. So I've actually been mentioning that in a lot of business settings, more so these days. And Rob, the Zingerman's organizational ecosystem is surrounded by love. So how can we love ourselves? How can we love other people better, truly love them better, and really move forward during this time? So it was a great group. I'd love to continue the dialogue. And thank you, Rob and JQ, for being here today.
I also wanted to add the power of groups. Brittany, Marvin, a couple other people are part of groups that I've been running for years, and they are very important parts of our lives. To have a group that you could go to on a weekly or monthly basis and get to know people and share, pretty deep thoughts, ideas, the things that are in the back of our mind that we often don't have time to articulate. So if anybody, I'll make a promotion. If anybody would like to participate in one of my groups, please let me know. I'm always forming new ones, and I'll be happy to include you in that, talk to you about it. JQ, I wonder if anybody has ideas for JQ. I'm just trying to kind of wrap up. We are a giving and loving community. We're happy to have you part of that, JQ. I wonder if people want to share any thoughts they have about making your business successful, ideas connections, whatever, reactions, and also how to make your book successful. Are you all set on your social media? Do you have a good website set up and all that, JQ?
I do. And the whole process, I've really learned the whole supply chain of writing the book, getting the book out there. It's been interesting because I've been kind of forced, my team kind of forced me to do more marketing and promotion. To me, I shied away from that for years, and now, it's that finding that balance. But I think to the point that Doug was making, just one thing I want to say is that I say this all the time, but love is supreme. Like there's the greatest thing in whatever it is that you believe, but in our lives. And I think what COVID has taught us is that love is always supreme. And so the work that we do, the impact that we're making in our communities and people and who we are to our families and our friends is all about love. And the good thing about COVID is it allowed us to slow down so that we can actually really appreciate the things that matter the most, like the trees, the sun, parks, our family. Things that a lot of times we're moving, so fast that we forget about. But at the end of the day, whatever it is that we do, our why, our purpose, our mission is all tied to the things that we love. And if anything, that COVID has given us, whether, people have been sick, I know people have died. At the end of the day, I think that what I appreciate more than ever before is love, and to be able to spread it and to share it every day intentionally. So.
Hey, Rob, also speaking of JQ's book, I think we've got a few books to give away.
Want to talk about that, Mike?
Yeah, I think we've got books we're going to give away to all the people that stepped up to report out from their groups. All of you are going to get a free book. And I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. The book's coming out in January 7th, I believe, Making Dollars While Making Change. And so Mike Durchis, how are we going to coordinate that?
Yeah, great question. So we've got the names of the folks that spoke out. And I think through registration, we have your emails, but so we can reach out and get, mailing addresses that way. And I think we probably got an extra couple of books. So I would suggest if you're interested in putting your name in the hat for a book, add it in the chat, and we will we'll randomly draw a couple of names to get the book once it comes out. In addition, Jonathan's just put up the order site for pre-ordering your book. If you don't happen to be one of the lucky few who win a book off the raffle.
I got an idea. I have an idea right away about how to sell more of these books. You could say, "Making dollars while making love." That would probably.
Well, let me say this. Let me say one more thing.
That's the sequel's name. That's the point out.
Hey, Jonathan, what I'd like to say also is that although I'm getting a free book, I'm going to commit to 5 books so that I can give away to family and loved ones.
Thank you. And let me just say this.
How about a spot on the Myers shelves? That would even be better.
Let's talk about it.
Let me say something logistical about the books for a second. So the books that people are getting today are actually not the ones that are dropping to general public on January 7th. These are actually pre-order books. They're all going to be autographed by JQ. And Adrian, if you want to buy, you can buy 5 books, purchase them on the website, jonathanquarles.com. And then if you want them sent to 5 different people, or maybe you want 2 sent to one person and 3 sent to another, you could just email that to info@jonathanquarles.com and we'll facilitate that.
Thank you.
Yep. And let me say one more thing as it relates to the books. Again, I try to be very intentional about all of the businesses, making sure we're double, triple bottom line. But the first 500 copies of our books, it will be going towards a scholarship at Florida A&M University. So again, like every business that we are involved in, there's always a give back. And to me, honestly, the book to me is information sharing. It's not about me trying to get rich off of this, but I want to be able to help bless, hopefully, people with some of the concept best practices and real tangible tips and practices that I think that's not just helped me, but helped other folks that I've actually experienced throughout my life. But to be able to start a scholarship fund at Florida A&M University, the university I went to school, eventually we're going to hopefully have build an endowment for individuals that are interested in entrepreneurship. So that's the long-term goal, but this scholarship will be the seed fund for that.
Fantastic. I'd like to also, I'm very inspired by today's talk, and I want to feature this video and some of the comments from you on my Dr. Rob Monday newsletter. So I'm going to send out a note to people. Emily, you can help me with this, about asking to share some of your key learnings from this. And if you would be willing to have me include those, I will include those on the Monday newsletter, so that people are tired of hearing from Dr. Rob all the time. And I want them to hear from you about this topic and about the things that came up as a result of participating today. So I want to thank everybody for participating. I think we're going to do some more of these in December. I'm hoping to do one on schools, what's going on in the schools, and really feature some of the ideas here about what you gain from trying to educate your children at home. So with that, thank you again, Jonathan. Wish you tremendous success for this book. We all will get behind you, and I'm sure people could share with you their ideas about how they may be able to help you, who they could connect you with. You're on a great mission. You have a great vision for what your future will be. And I'm sure your 3 daughters will be saying in a few years that their dad was a great influence in their lives too. So that's the biggest legacy from this. Thank you very much. We'll wrap up now and take you back to your couch or wherever you may be doing your work today. Take care.
Thanks so
All
much.
right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all. This is fantastic. Really enjoyed
Thank
it.
you.
And have a great day. Thank you.
This has been great.